All right, we're in the interview portion of today's show. Huge week in college football, huge game. Nobody better to talk to than former Notre Dame legend. You're like one of my white whale guys. It's Brady Quinn. Welcome to the show, Brady.
Guys, thanks for having me. You know, we tried to make this happen a year ago. Couldn't really coordinate the schedule and all that. You guys tape a little later in the day. Like, I'm an early morning guy. Like, usually I'm like, hey, can they do it at 6 a.m.? Can we do it at 5, somewhere in that hour? And you guys were like, no chance, like, no go.
Well, you should have just contacted me directly. Dave and I, we wake up at 5:30 every day. So if you wanted to do a 6 a.m. interview, I would have had, my first coffee of the day. This is number 2. So we could have made that work. So we'll just cut out the middleman. It'll be you and me from now on.
There we go.
Yeah. So this is a huge game for Notre Dame this week. And I'm going to think about I'm a huge Notre Dame fan. In my lifetime, yours against USC still sticks out as like the biggest hype game of my lifetime. What's it like being the quarterback on campus leading into a game like this? Like, what do you remember about that week?
The one thing I remember is just, and in South Bend, it's a destination, right? Like, if you're going to South Bend, you're going there for Notre Dame. And I remember that week, in college, you have off Mondays. So Tuesdays is your first practice week. And they're usually you start seeing people who'd be outside of your practice facility, like looking for autographs, that sort of thing, starting Wednesday, Thursday of a game week. This week, it was like just hanging around the facility watching film Monday. Tuesday after practice, people hounding you left and right, lined up to our facility. So it just had a different feel about it. Like, the campus had a different buzz about it. I recall we happen to have pep rallies, right? That's like a fun college thing. We had one on the South Quad that I was a part of, the Dillon pep rally. That was the dorm I was in that year. That thing, there was thousands of people there for that. They had to move our pep rally the night before the game from the Joyce Center, which is typically the basketball arena. They had to move it in the stadium, and they literally filled half the stadium. So the entire buzz around campus was completely different. And I think, look, that's part of Notre Dame and the special place that it is. It also has a lot to do with how good USC was at that time, and really like what they had accomplished at that time. And that was the number 1 team who was on a streak coming in town. And I think the excitement that, Charlie Weiss had built just from the beginning of that season, and how different our team was from the prior 2 years.
Yeah, it does feel a little bit similar to right now, this game coming up, where you have an insurgent Notre Dame team, and now they've been back in a way that they weren't prior to your year in 2005. But it does feel like, yeah, they're in the top 10. Some polls have them 5th, yet they're 17-point underdogs. So was that a talking point heading into the USC game? Like, nobody believes in us, we're getting disrespected. Was there a lot of bulletin board material leading into that game?
Not so much. Charlie was more along the lines of a lot of those New England coaches, where he'd use some things as motivation or bulletin board material, but it wasn't so much like spreads and lines. Like, that's more something that I think now everyone's become more comfortable with. I remember back then, it's like, oh, God forbid we talk about a betting line. Like, this actually exists out there. Like, that people actually place wagers on these matches. And now it's the big business for the NFL. It will be for college football. It's something that you kind of slide in broadcast as much as you can. But it was I don't know if it's taboo is the right word for it, but it just wasn't talked about quite as much. But he was like singularly focused on our game plan. That was his thing, was, hey, if we do exactly what we're talking about doing, which we almost pulled that off, we could be effective. We could beat this team with this matchup and how we're trying to do it. So that was the biggest thing I think for us is, coming out of halftime in that game, is you never really know, especially first year with the head coach. We hadn't had success really, prior to that. We were a 500 football team during the course of the regular season. And, now we've got this new guy coming in telling us this stuff. And it was like, oh, okay. Like, we can play with these guys. Like if we play our style of game, like, we can make this happen. We can win this game. And it just so, happened. Things didn't work out in our way in the end, but damn, it was sure close. I mean, it came down to almost like exactly the things he had said to me leading up to that game and how that game was going to play out.
Were you like working on your Heisman speech after that touchdown to put you guys ahead late? Were you like,
no,
oh my God?
I am an awful human being in the sense of I view life in this way of always like, what's the downside risk of something, and it's a terrible way to go through life. But I wish I could tell people, like, the excitement, like the first initial thought was my knee down before the ball crossed the goal line? And then once they said it was touchdown, I was like, okay, I was excited for a minute, but I literally, like, you can see on tape, I turned back and look at the clock. because I was like, oh God, we left them way too much time. Because Charlie's conversation the whole week was the team that has the ball last is going to win the game. And so I was thinking as we were like going down the field, like we want to score, obviously we needed to, but at the same time, like we didn't want to do it too quick. And in retrospect, it probably would have been better had I been short.
Yeah.
We could have taken more time off the clock and then a quarterback sneak to get in. So I still get the Heisman conversation or that speech afterwards, but
yeah,
just a different way of scoring at that point.
Yeah. What do you make of the fact that Notre Dame and USC might be a conference game going forward?
I think it's awesome for college football. I think there's a lot of people right now who are, kind of concerned with where college football is at. And I think anytime there's change, it's going to feel uncomfortable to a lot of us.
I hate it. I hate change.
No, everyone hates change. Yeah. I mean, honestly, like, you get older, you got to go to the bathroom more. Like, that's not fun. It's like I'm listening to, PFT and Big Cat talk about, like, is he like a poop guy? Like, does he have to race to go to the bathroom like 4 or 5 times a day? For those of us with faster metabolisms, like it takes up a good portion of your day, especially as you get older. So, no one likes change.
Yeah, I don't think that's a Big Cat problem though. The fast metabolism.
No,
not this. Yeah, he probably has the other issue.
Yeah,
it's like the days where he hasn't. When he's getting aggravated because
he puts his shits on Google Calendar. Be like, I got to shit on Thursday. Here it comes.
I got to try to.
Yeah,
like he just blocks off the entire day.
Exactly.
And can I shit this day? Like, will it happen?
Yeah. Going back to the change in landscape here a little bit. How much do you think you would have made on an NIL deal if that was allowed?
I don't know. It's tough answering those questions. I mean, I know what some of these guys are making now at Notre Dame. I mean, they're making into the 6 figures when you're a star player there. And so I would have liked to think that, you would have been able to get that. It's a national brand. It's unique. They've got some great partners and sponsors. So, yeah, I think you're talking about like easy 6 figures, maybe into 7 figures for a quarterback there, I think, when they're successful. And I think it's one of the upsides in a lot of these recruits now is when you're looking at, for example, Bryce Young, who wins the Heisman Trophy and comes back for another year at Alabama because he's not draft eligible yet. He's probably making 7 figures, probably low 7 figures, maybe $1 million or so. And that's awesome. As good as that is at Alabama, that's not Notre Dame. And that's one of the biggest differences is I think for the recruits who are going to Notre Dame and they're looking at the upside of the place with NIL now a real thing, it's huge. And so I don't ever look back and go like, oh, I wish I could have this or that. I mean, I think the one thing that thinking back on it, and it was part of like the recruiting pitch initially, was they had your high school number in your locker. And so it would list all the All-Americans who had your number at Notre Dame. And for mine, there was no one. And so I was like, man, that'd be so cool. And it just said like, create your own legend. And I was like, all right, like I could go with number 3. That's like the number there for quarterbacks and previous quarterbacks like Joe Montana, et cetera, who had won a national championship and had that tradition. But there was something special from my high school about 10 and what that number meant to me and my little sister who played soccer. So I was just like, I'm gonna keep rocking number 10 and try to make, my own legend out of this. And what you noticed is like there was never 10s until like I started playing. You start seeing people wearing them. You're going, hold a second, like that's pretty cool. That's awesome. But now in retrospect, you're going like, oh damn, that was probably a lot of money that was left on the table there in some of those jersey sales. So.
Yeah, I think it's easy 7 figures. Easy 7 figures. For what that that team at that time, it's yeah.
I mean, I think for a quarterback, and that's why look
at your hair, look at that smile, you got the tan going. That's worth 7 figures right there. Put that number 10 on, you're good to go.
I didn't have a tan back then.
Yeah, I'll say this though, you got the Pauly Walnuts wings going a little bit.
Yeah, I'm trying to get them going. This is actually like not. It's frowned upon in the TV business, so I'm like subtly trying to get the flow bucket back.
I like that.
I just got to figure out how I like navigate past our executives at Fox, because every once in a while you get that like, hey, hair's looking a little like
here's
rubbish
some
there.
Just for men,
Yeah, like, are you going to brush out those grays? I'm like, no, man, I'm going to rock it. I'm going to rock it till it all falls off.
Wani does it.
You're distinguished. Look how distinguished you look now.
Wani's hair / mustache is like the most distinguishing things outside of his voice.
And he's like 70-something years old and like the most handsome dude on earth. With all due respect,
he's a legend.
Yeah,
he's an absolute. I actually sent him a text.
70.
I sent him a text last night. I forget. I had a photo of him. I found somewhere, like someone sent it to me, so I forwarded it to him. But Coach is the best, man. I miss working with that guy. I miss talking to him.
We had him in studio, I think, last year. Shocked at how huge he is. He's a big man. He's
6'4", 6'5".
Fills out a doorway. He's a big dude.
He played now.
Yeah. Oh, I know. But it was just like, you don't think about it. I remember him from just being the Bears coach, and I don't think everyone gets a sense of how big someone is just from watching him on the sidelines because he's next to all enormous people. Let's talk about this game coming up because I feel like Notre Dame is getting disrespected. It's a huge line. No, everybody in my mentions they're going to lose 52-17, something like that. Do you think that there's a path for Notre Dame to win this game, and what is that path?
For sure. I mean, look, we called we were there for the Ohio State-Oregon game last year. Now, granted, a little different situation, right? Ohio State's still playing at home, but playing at Oregon in midday. You know, you're gonna get those Buckeye fans all boozed up for the entire day, waiting for anticipation of this one. So it's gonna be it might be the craziest environment these football players ever experience at Notre Dame. In all honesty, with all the places they'll go, this will be. And I grew up going to the Horseshoe when I was young. This will be probably the craziest environment they'll play in. And so that in and of itself will be difficult. But, look at Oregon. Oregon walked in there and could give two shits about that. They were the more physical team. They ran the football. Ohio State never made adjustments at all defensively, which was probably, the precipice of bringing in Jim Knowles as their defensive coordinator, which if you go back to how that bowl game went for Notre Dame versus Oklahoma State, same scheme.
Yep.
That was Jim Knowles' defense. They torched that group. And really,
in
it was
the first half.
Self-inflicted wound. Yeah, but even the second half, it was a self-inflicted wound. Those turnovers, they kind of hurt themselves there. So now, look, the talent for Ohio State's defense is better than that at Oklahoma State. It's not a shot at Oklahoma State; it's just the reality of it. So that would be a different challenge. But I mean, look, the game plan it's pretty simple. Buckner obviously has to play well. That's like a no shit comment, but everyone realizes that he has to take care of the football. He's going to have to use his legs at times because they will have a better pass rush this year. And he's going to have to make plays down the field. Like, they're not going to be able to play in this 10, 12-yard box around the line of scrimmage where Ohio State loads up to stop the run and basically say, show us that you can beat us with one of your wide receivers outside. So whether it's Lorenzo Styles or whoever else, Braden Lenzy, whoever's going to step up, someone has to step up for Notre Dame on the outside and win that one-on-one matchup. And then they're going to have to move around Mayer and find that matchup versus safeties, linebackers, because he's a difficult matchup for everyone. And then obviously, hang their hat on their offensive line. Their offensive line is an NFL group. They should be able to handle their own versus this Ohio State front.
Yep.
And whether it's Chris Tyree or Logan Diggs, like those guys should be able to do enough in the running game to be able to hold their own. And I think, and part of the reason why I bring up so much about offense right now is you really got to limit Ohio State's possessions. Like when you say shorten a game, what you're really trying to do is say, in a typical game, Ohio State's going to get 14 possessions, 15 possessions. We want to make it so they get 10 or 11, right? That's just less opportunities, obviously, for them to go down and score, create big plays. And that's their advantage, right? Like they are as talented of an offense as you'll find. And so it's not that you have to play a bend but don't break defense, because I think Foskey's one of the better edge rushers in all of college football. It doesn't matter which side he's rushing from. He's going to present some potential problems for them. It's more about the matchups on the outside and how Ohio State and Ryan Day, find those matchups, find ways of moving guys around to get them the football. And it's a very, very talented roster. And I think, again, a no shit comment goes without saying, but a lot of people overlook this week 1, week 0 college football. You don't play preseason. You don't tackle anymore. You don't take guys to the ground. Like there's never live. So you not only have to prepare for a guy that you've never had to go up against, but then you have to do it real speed. You have to actually get him to the ground. Like that is such a lost art. And especially early in the season, like tackling and missed tackles a lot of times determines the game. So, Notre Dame's going to have to play well in space defensively. They're going to have to try to get home with 4 rushers and then find ways of not allowing that big play and then forcing field goals in the red zone. And I think if they get a turnover or two, that's a plus, but I wouldn't bank on that with CJ Stroud. Like, I think that kid is as good as you'll find if he's playing from a clean pocket. Like, he's just not going to make a mistake.
Wish you didn't say that last part. I wish you had stopped like after like the Michael Mayer comment. I would have felt a lot better. Maybe we should just cut that before we release this this interview. What would you say in terms of like commanding a huddle or leadership to a guy like Buckner who's never really been in that position before? So a lot of hype coming in with him, a heavily recruited kid, and it's kind of like on his shoulders to be a difference maker. Is there something away from like, hey, don't turn the ball over, but just like a leadership thing that you would impart on him?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, you got to realize when you get there, like there's always that like, us against the world type mentality. That's really what it is though. And that switch turns on for you when you're a first time starter, when you walk out there and it's just you and the boys in the huddle. Now, granted, not as many teams huddle anymore, which I hate, but what you really need to focus on at that point is you got to look every one of those guys in the eyes. And you have to start to command to them what's going to happen, what you're going to do, and what your expectations are. So whether it's that play and making sure that you're reminding guys of their assignments and what they've got to do, or just firing them up. Like if you get a guy gets a 6-yard gain on a first down run, I mean it's not a touchdown, it's not a first down, but that's a great gain. Like that's the average you want the rest of the game. You get in there, you start firing those boys up, you start chirping at them. And you let them know you're going to bring the juice the entire game, and you're in it for that physical fight, because that's the group that's honestly going to lead them. It's the offensive line. Yeah. If Notre Dame can control the game, the offensive line, then they're going to have it's going to be a long day for Ohio State. But Buckner's got to be the one that it's got to be his voice, and he's got to be the commander kind of out there, like leading them and making sure like they understand like we're not going in there timid, and you're not going to go in there with any reservations about going and tucking the ball, taking off and making a play if you have to.
He is an athlete. Is it hard for you now that you're a broadcaster, you're buttoned up, you're cleaned up? Is it hard for you to stay neutral when talking about this game, or do you feel the need to stay neutral?
Yeah, I don't anymore. I think it used to be like that. Or if I was calling the game, I think it'd be different. Mm-hmm. Given my job now, I think it's kind of okay. Like okay.
I think people like that.
They do.
Yeah.
Well, and I think people understand like this is your alma mater.
Right.
Like, this is where I went, played for 4 years, and developed as a man. And so clearly there's going to be ties and emotions and all of it. I also think I can check myself and say, hey, how do these two teams match up on paper? Like I'm not an athlete anymore. When I was, I didn't care if we were playing US. I didn't care who we were playing.
Yeah.
Every game I went into, I thought we were going to win because I thought we were going to execute our game plan. Now on paper or how things turned out, yeah, that's probably what we were up against. When you're playing against a better team than you are, a more talented team, you're not going to win, 6 times out of 10. It might only be 3 or 4, and you hope that day's one of those 3 or 4. So, as far as like this matchup, this one's always different for me because I'm from Columbus. Mm-hmm. And I remember playing Ohio State, back when I was in college, and just the fact that I could have went to Ohio State, I chose not to. It wasn't the place for me, especially not at that point in time, the offense they were running. Mm-hmm. I thought Notre Dame was like better for me educationally, spiritually, all that stuff. But it was like that one opportunity that you got. And when it doesn't work out the way you want, it hurts because that lives with you the rest of your life. There's nothing you can do to go back and change that. So this one, of course, it means a little bit more. I mean, I've got a foundation that works for veterans. We do work at both schools. Honestly, we have a peer-to-peer mentorship program at Ohio State, and we've got a Warrior Scholar project in Notre Dame, and helping to fund some of their veteran initiatives. So, obviously, like on the outside, like I see both sides of this, but there's no doubt my heart's with Notre Dame, and I'm not afraid to let anyone know that.
All right, so worst case scenario, let's say that they drop this game, okay? They play close, whatever. What's a successful season look like record-wise for Marcus Freeman in year one? Because the win total is at 8.5. I feel like, I don't know, I just feel like this is another year where people are underestimating what Harry Hiestand coming back means and the maturity of that program. So what do you expect from Notre Dame the rest of the way after Ohio State?
Look, I think their floor is 9-3. I mean, if you look at their schedule and we sit here and honestly go, okay, who are their toughest games? Clearly at Ohio State. Mm-hmm. Then they got to play Clemson at home midseason, and then they finish at USC. All right, they're your 3 hardest games. Let's say they drop all 3 of those. Okay, they should beat everyone else. Yeah. I mean, this is a talented, good football team. You have one of the best edge rushers, the best tight end, in my opinion, an NFL offensive line. You've got one of the best play callers in Tommy Rees. I think in the world of Marcus Freeman, I think there could be some growing pains with Al Golden, like taking over as DC and getting his feet kind of settled there. Brandon Joseph is one of the best safeties in the country. You've got the star power and talent. Like, that's where I'm always surprised. For 8.5, I'm like, well, who the hell are they losing to?
I think the other one they're talking about is BYU.
Yeah, that's the one I'm
that
looking
would be
at
the
now.
only other in Vegas, but it's like
It's a trap game.
You could say it's a trap game. I think the other thing, and you guys could probably look this up while I'm sitting here, but it's kind of difficult to do, is Notre Dame traditionally plays a tough schedule, not just because of how many teams are ranked that they play, right? Which I think they play, 4 right now in their schedule that are ranked?
Yep.
But it's like, look how many teams come off a bye. Because remember, they're independent.
Yeah.
So almost all of them are like, last year was like 6 teams or something like that. And you're going, well, yeah, that makes your schedule, I don't care who you're playing, a little bit tougher when they've got 2 weeks to prepare. You know, I don't care if it's the Sisters of the Blind. Yeah. Like, they've got 2 weeks to prepare for whatever that game plan is and rest up and get healthy, and you don't. So they've always got a tough schedule, in my opinion. I know that was like a conversation piece over the offseason and where their AP ranking is, but they've been as consistent as pretty much any school the last 5 years.
It drives me crazy. It drives because I feel like people are just lying. Like, they're ignoring like facts to like push a narrative, and it drives me insane.
Well, because it's Notre Dame, right? Like, I always say this every time this time of year, there gets to be a slow period, and you always see 1 or 2 pundits do it every year. They're like, oh, something about Notre Dame, or why are they this, or why are they start bashing them.
Yeah. Because
they know that there's those that bash them and there's those that love them. There's really no in between. And so you're going to get a reaction on both sides of it, and that's what creates a buzz. So it's funny to me. I mean, like, sitting back and listening to it, because I said, all right, like, let people talk. And then, you know, Notre Dame will cover, they'll pull off the upset. And then what's the narrative going to be? I mean, the reality is, like, I honestly feel like they can easily go 11-1 too, even if they drop this opener to Ohio State, and they're still in conversation for the college football playoff.
Yep.
Because I think Ohio State's going to win the Big Ten, and I think you're going to see them obviously ranked ahead of them in that case. And then you'd see, like, okay, well, where does Ohio State or where does Notre Dame, sit at? If they're 5 now, you can't think they're going to drop too far. They should drop too far if they win out the rest of the season. So that's I think, honestly, the biggest thing off this game is, for Notre Dame, this game can't be the entire season. Like, I think if they get too wrapped up into this game being the entire season, then they allow the result, good or bad, to impact potentially how the rest of the year goes. And that's where I think you can fall victim to that as a first-year head coach for Coach Freeman, is that if he allows it to be too much put into this game, and then you don't rebound from it and become the team you're capable of being at the end of the season, when, really that's going to matter most.
One more question. I don't even know if you can answer this because you're under contract with Fox, but would you ever want to be the guy to call Notre Dame games? Is that something that you would be interested in?
That would be something that I think would be special. Mm-hmm. That being said, look, I mean, their rights are up here in a couple of years.
I know.
If you were going to, like, leave all of a sudden to go call because they're with NBC right now, but then all of a sudden NBC doesn't have their rights, then you're going, wait a second, that was a bad move. Like,
sounds like you've already thought about this, actually, Brady. That's what it sounds like.
I think about a lot of things. Yeah. I think about a lot of things.
Worst case scenario, always.
Yes, always. Like that. Case in point, like you go leave that job, they're not there anymore. What game are you calling now? Okay. Yeah. So you think about those things. It would be special. It really would be, especially getting to be able to get back there so often.
Yep.
But look, I love the crew I'm with. I love what I'm doing now at Fox. It allows me to stay so involved with, like, the entire landscape of college football.
It's a great crew. As a college football fan or a sports fan, when everyone thinks about the NBA and TNT, I think your crew is, like, right there. Like, that's a great group for a college football pregame show or college football show. So yeah, I don't blame you for saying that either, because that is a great team.
I haven't chirped in too much here today because you guys have just been ripping it off all well. But how much, like,
light on the desk? How hungover are you right now?
It's Revitalite, and it's got that familiar black label, the Barstool Sports label on it. Product placement. I'm not hungover.
So actually drink. You guys aren't drinking that today.
Only 70 calories. Oh yeah, I'll drink it all day, every day. It's the best. Okay. Off camera, like, every guy that's ever played a sport, at least through the high school level, does this. How much do you, Reggie Bush and Liner, like, bust balls about the USC Notre Dame rivalry? Like
we
over
do a little
beers.
bit. I mean, look, there's not much I can say at that point.
Right, I
mean,
know,
the reality is
but-
they were dominant, but again, we kind of know why they were dominant. It's one of the reasons why they've had such a hard time building everything back.
They
since
were on
then.
an NIL deal before anyone knew about it.
Right. Yeah, they had a first mover advantage.
Yeah.
Very aggressive there at Southern Cal. We do a little bit. It's honestly grown to be more of like a friendship or more like different inside jokes about like different things. Like I always say this, like Reggie is one of the funniest human beings. And I don't know that it's always intentional. It's just like the way his mind works. And so I get to sit next to him. So that's always been like a huge joy because it could be moments before air and he'll ask something or say something and I'll just lose it. Like,
Yeah.
I'll never forget. I think the first time we actually got to go to Ohio State, Michigan, it was in Ann Arbor. And it was, our pregame show, I think back then might have only been the first hour. So it's probably 5 minutes before we're live. And he leans over, he's like, "Hey man, do you know anyone that has any extra tickets to today's game?" And I kind of stopped and turned to him. I'm like, there's thousands of people screaming all around us. I mean, I'm like, "Hey Reg, man, like this thing holds like 100-some thousand." I was like, "But there's probably like another 30,000 who are waiting to try to get in with some ticket or something." I go, "No, I don't have any extra tickets. I think you're gonna have a hard time finding some."
Just go scalp some off the street.
Well, then I was like, the whole rest of the show, I'm kind of watching, thinking, is he like going to be texting people like, "Hey, can you give me tickets throughout the rest of the show?" Like, that's Reggie. Like,
what's your brother-in-law's number? Can we get your brother-in-law? Can we call him real quick? Yeah.
Seriously, like I think that he may have even asked that at some point. Yeah. But so that's Reggie, and Matt and I have grown really close. We obviously kept kind of tabs on each other, like once we got in the NFL together and would see each other every once in a while, preseason, et cetera. But and then we've just kind of grown close, like as my family's grown as a father, so is his, and kind of just relating and all that stuff. So it's just different. Like you kind of grow from what you felt like was old, like college or high school kind of like stuff to now it's like real, like adult conversations, which is, it's kind of weird to honestly like admit, like we're kind of just like a family now.
Oh, that's nice. That's a nice note to end on. So Brady, loved having you on. Glad we finally got to do it. You got me excited for Saturday more so. I feel like you and I are the only ones saying that they've got a chance.
Oh, they've got more than a chance, man. I think there's a strong likelihood they surprise a lot of people this Saturday.
Love that. All right, well, go Irish. We'll be watching
Irish.
you all season long. Thanks for joining us, and maybe we'll get you back here before the playoff because we'll be in it.
Sounds good. Hopefully we'll be in Chicago again. We did that last year. That was awesome,
would be great.
Man.
Yeah, that would be great. We'd love to have you in studio. We'll give you a Wani's chair, which is right here. So
there you go. I was gonna say we'll get Coach Wani to come through the cigar too. That'd be great.
That would be that. I would love a cigar with Wani. That's
a bucket list cigar
that I didn't know was on my bucket list until you just said it.
Has he told you the old stories like back in his old school days?
He had
like
a whole laundry list just rifling off. We just were lobbing him questions and letting him run with them.
Well, he hit Dave with his car.
No, I hit him with my car. Oh, you
hit him with your car. That's right.
Like literally hit him? Like actually hit him?
It was when I had an actual 9-to-5 job and not whatever this is. And it was 5 p.m. I used to work in the same building as the Big Ten Network. And I'm sitting there, and at 5 p.m. every day, it was a 1-lane street. And it would take like 40 minutes to get out of there, even though you're driving like a block. And I'm sitting there texting and driving like always, which I shouldn't do, but I always do. And I look up and I'm about to hit somebody, and the guy puts his hands on my hood, and I'm like, "Juan-A," and he goes, "Yo," and he just kept walking.
No problem.
That was Dave Wanstead.
Classic coach. Yep. Classic coach Wanstead. I'm telling you, he's the best. He's got stories that like back before NIL that you're just going, this is legendary. Yeah. I mean, the stuff like coaches did like back in those days, and when the days before cell phones and camera phones, I mean, it's incredible. Just some of the recruiting stories.
It was like the program.
I'm sure he was the bag man when he was down with Jimmy Johnson at Miami. I'm sure he's got crazy, dropping duffel bags everywhere.
Everyone's got to have a bag man. Yeah. I mean, that was the deal back in the day.
I would love to have been the bag man for anybody. I offered that to Pat Fitzgerald a couple years ago, and he's like, "We're good on that, but
well, you would mess it up. You would get them. You would get them on probation.
They'd be in probation.
Can we get a round of applause for Coach Fitz?
We love
going
Fitz.
Over to Ireland, going over there, just dominating, doing what he does best. I mean, they were a 13-point underdog. I think the line closed at like 10.
Yeah.
And they just outright win. They're like, we don't care. We don't care what you think.
They played Fitz ball to a T.
That was Fitz ball.
I mean, it's hard to, I love Coach Freeman, but I love Pat Fitzgerald. Like, Fitzy is just a legend. Like, you talk to that guy on camera, off camera, he's just genuine. He is who he is.
Oh yeah.
I was happy for him, man. Like, I love when those guys overcome and go out there and win some ball games. So it's always good when Fitzy's in the mix.
We love it. I think we had him on last week. So this is a pretty good run of college football guests to kick off the season. So we won't take up any more of your time. So appreciate you coming on. And we'll see. I'll DM you on Saturday. Victory video.
There we go.
All right. Thanks, Quiddy.
Thanks, guys.
Yep.
Take it easy, Brady. Thank you, man.